Welcome to the Building Doctor Show with Jens Johansson.
Hey, everybody. If you have tuned into the Building Doctor Show before, you might notice that I am not Jens Johansson. I am in his office, though. So, Jens, if you're watching, I'm not giving it back. My name is Kelly Garland. I'm the Client Success Manager at J2 Building Consultants. And this is a special episode of the Building Doctor Show because in honor of Women's History Month, we are letting the women do the work this time. And we have a great panel of women from the industry, female leaders that are really excited to talk to you about a wide spectrum of things, not just about women. So if you're a guy watching, don't click away, don't go anywhere. I promise there's useful information. But let's go ahead and meet our panelists. We're going to start off with Jessica Malurk.
I'm the design manager at J2. I oversee all of our design projects in all three offices. Happy to be here.
All right, next up, Andrea Goodmanson.
Andrea Goodmanson. I'm a co-owner of McLeod Construction. We're a general contractor that does repairs and renovations on HOAs and condos. And my role in the company is basically CFO and a little bit of marketing.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Samantha Oldham. I'm with Trestle Community Management. I'm a senior manager there. I've been a manager in the industry for 6 years now and been in the industry with business partners and whatnot for over 10. So happy to be here. Thanks.
All right, ladies, thank you so much. Let's go ahead and get started, though. Back to things here. We're going to move on and talk about the things that we're going to talk about today. We're going to start off with a big picture, zoomed out, talking about just, all of the aspects that a lot of people might not even realize or do and never get to talk about it as far as women in the industry goes. And then we're going to go ahead and talk about the many aspects of our industry. We are all representing different parts of this community. So we'll talk about property management, HOA and board leadership, contractor expertise, your building consultants, of course. And then we'll go ahead and talk about the difficult things, the difficult conversations, the challenges, the things that we overcome, we adapt and overcome. And the my favorite part, the advice and the Q&A. We're going to talk a little bit of the insights and meaningful things that we as women in the industry have learned, have valued, have appreciated. So it should be fun. Let's go ahead and start. We did our introductions. We know each other well now. And let's talk about something that I thought was very interesting. I've always really enjoyed sharing, which is the statistics and how many of our companies, if not all, I think, are outliers to those statistics. The construction industry is pretty vast, which is something Andrea had mentioned in a previous conversation we had. And generally speaking, within the construction industry, we're looking at about a 10% average of women in the workforce. It's definitely a male-dominated industry. Of course, that is a little bit different in the management aspect of things, but what's not different is the interaction with the construction industry and boards and male-dominated aspects of the industry. But what I love about J2 is that we're outliers. We're a 33.3% female employed company. And what I love about that is about 85% of us are in leadership roles. So we're a company that really just respects people of all genders who want to own their lane, are passionate about that. And I think the same would go for you. Andrea, I think you were saying that it was something similar for you guys.
Yeah, we actually are at 100 employees right now. I think 31 of us are in the office, and of those office employees, we're over 30. I think we're about 35% right now in the office. So it's a good mix here in the office. We've had women in the field as well. And there's a great little slide for you. Yeah, and we're seeing more and more people coming into the industry, women especially, from other areas. But I think one of the best things, and especially what this is showing a little bit of the increase in participation in construction, is that the newer generations are getting exposure to the trades either through generational, like it's not just the sons learning the business, it's the daughters as well. My daughter is an employee here in the office. And there's also carpentry trades in high schools and that sort of thing. And there's a lot more exposure, especially from the unions. They're doing a fantastic job of outreach. So we're seeing a lot. We're seeing a lot of women coming in. I just had an informational interview with a woman who actually came from nonprofits. And she was interested in the trades, and she went through a program called ANEW, ANEW, and it's a pre-apprenticeship training program. So you kind of get an exposure to the trades, and those things just weren't around, even 20 years ago. And so for people to really get a feel for what it's like, if they've worked with their hands at home on remodels or whatever, they can see if construction or any of the other trades, plumbing, electrical, are right for them. So I think the exposure is definitely increased, like this chart is showing.
Yeah, and that actually brings us into some of these key reasons that we're seeing those statistical changes. Now, that's a really interesting program, ANEW, ANEW. So that it's an apprenticeship program. If you're watching, check it out. I think Carolyn can put that into the chat. ANEW, ANEW.
Yeah. If I can, I'll put I'll put their website in the chat as well if I'm allowed
great.
to. So, yeah.
Great. Yes, please do. I think that like you're saying, these hiring initiatives, the growth opportunities, these are all things that factor into, what we're seeing with women in the workforce in this industry. We have had a pretty rapid growth in the last few years at J2. And I think that we have really strong leadership. We have a visionary, Jens, who, leads the pack. And one of the things that I really love as Jens as a leader is that he seeks and empowers people to be passionate in their fields of expertise, not necessarily the industry as a whole, and lets them really own their lanes. I did not come from the construction industry. I didn't even know what a building envelope was when I started. But what I did value was J2's core values and authenticity and our desire to provide positive market disruption. And I think that has been able to be something that I've been able to translate. And I've learned a lot in the time I've been here. I actually diagnosed a building issue the other day. It was amazing. But I think having a different respect towards that concept of market disruption and kind of breaking the mold of convention as being a positive thing and a thing that has shown to have value, that's bringing a lot of people from the outside in from different aspects as well. And next, this is something I was going to lead into, so we'll go ahead and flop that slide over. First, I want to mention this graphic that you're seeing here is a J2 sticker that we have. It was designed in-house, and I really, really love that girl's tattoo. I don't have one, but I'm not going to get a J2 tattoo, but I like it. But I digress. Samantha, you are in the property management world, which we know in the employment aspect tends to be heavily female, but your clientele and your day-to-day interactions aren't necessarily the same. Why don't you go ahead and tell us more about that?
Yeah, typically most of our clients, or at least the clients that I have ever had throughout the years, is men. And so there's been a lot of difficult times where there's other factors too. I'm on the younger side. I have tattoos. I'm a woman. And so having to explain to men who are, 40 years my age, how to do something with their money or their buildings or whatnot, you have to present yourself in certain ways where you're confident in the things that you're saying so that you can gain respect of those that you're talking to. So it's been a challenge in a lot of ways, but luckily with experience, you learn that every client is different and you adapt to everyone and you just, kind of jump in as best you can. Oh, and yeah, wearing different hats, like I said, adapting to everyone. So we utilize any tools available to us, like business partners, for example, to also help with those conversations and whatnot. And so far it's worked out.
I'll say. And speaking of the tattoos, I had a mentor at a previous job I had. She's a really strong female leader who once said to me, your work is going to speak a lot louder than your tattoos will. And I really appreciated that. And I think that your work speaks way louder than your tattoos do, but I love your tattoos too.
Thank you.
Moving on, Jessica, you're in a really interesting dynamic, and I was trying to figure out how to word this in a way that didn't feel like I was assessing stereotypes, but let's just be honest. Sometimes a stereotype exists because it does. And in the design world, I think that when we speak to matters of the aesthetic, that really does tend to be something that women fall deeper into being passionate about and more detail oriented about. And so what are some of the dynamics that you see in working with boards in design?
Oh, I mean, you kind of have to learn to read a room a little bit. And, especially with our projects, I think that, money is usually the driving force when it comes to the design decisions on our projects that we work on. So, I try to be respectful of the budget because that's usually the thing that everybody is so focused on. And, it's these are the most expensive projects that most people go through, especially for construction wise. This is their biggest asset that they own most times. So, you know, being respectful of that and suggesting where I feel that money can get, or products in general can get them the most bang for their buck on their building. And sometimes they can't afford it, but I guess what? Paint can do wonders with the siding. It just it totally changes the feel if you white trim and darker siding, or reverse that and do light siding with dark trim. And, I think that also being honest with them is helpful in the process. I'm not afraid to gently tell the board that I don't think something is a good idea. And I think that earns me respect and they appreciate my honesty. So yeah, and also just relating to them. I've done projects on my own house. It's not fun. It's not fun spending money on things you don't want to do, leaks or broken appliances that lead to more damage. So, being there and trying to reiterate that we're there as their advocate for the project tends to help them relax a little bit, knowing that they're in good hands, and that usually sets us in the right path for the project moving forward.
In your experience, do you find that when design committees exist on boards and whatnot, are those typically female-led, male-led? Does it run the spectrum?
It's a mix. Sometimes it's all women, sometimes it's all boys, sometimes or men. And sometimes I'd say majority of the time it's a mix. And regardless of the gender, they usually come to me to help them make decisions because every board, every project is different. Sometimes they have strong opinions one way or the other on an item, and sometimes they all have different opinions, which makes things interesting. But I try and keep them focused on the big picture and remind them of the things that are most important. Sometimes that's budget, sometimes that's aesthetic, and sometimes that's function. And then we kind of move forward from there.
I think this is why I don't serve on any design or aesthetic committees, because everything would have glitter if I had my say. Everything. We'd bedazzle every door in our condo. So this is my favorite part because we're going to break some rules and everybody's going to go off mute on this one. And we had a few conversations leading up to this. So everybody take those microphones off mute. We're breaking rules, breaking barriers and breaking rules.
Rule breaker.
So we had a couple of rehearsals prior to this show. And one of the things that we all discovered was that we converse really well. And another thing that women have is a strong suit. So we thought, it'd be really cool if we just took some time and just had some discussions, talked about some things that we all, know and feel as women in the industry. We're going to talk a little bit about some of those challenges and maybe commiserate a little bit. But I'm really interested to know how we all got started in the industry. So we can go one at a time, but let's all feel like, we can, speak up when something inspires us. We'll start with Samantha this time since I'm going top down, down top.
Sounds good. Well, I mean, I was on a totally different life path before I came to be a community manager. I went to culinary school. I thought that it was great to, make beautiful plates and feed people, and they were always happy because they were eating good food, and they were easy to please, but the industry itself wasn't a fun necessarily place to work in, and kitchens are hot and a lot of chefs aren't very nice and whatnot. I wanted to be in a little bit of a more different atmosphere. And so I left that completely and went over to administrative roles. And I remember I would talk to, so there's a little bit of a difference between property managers and community managers, but we won't get into that. But I was talking to property managers a lot when I was at a pest control office. And the gal told me that she was sitting by a pool with her laptop doing her job. And I said, well, I want to do that one day. And so that's actually how I got into this industry, just by being envious of her sitting by a pool. And so from there, I just, I had no idea what I was doing in the beginning. I didn't know what a governing document was or anything. I was young and it just stuck. And then I set goals for myself, and here we are today, and I love it. And I'll probably be in it until the day I die. And that's going to be a really long time. So
I love it. I'm all for the long life and
Yeah.
all for the sitting by the pool. Clearly, I don't spend a lot of time by the pool because I'm looking at all four of us on this panel, and one of us is a little pale.
I thought that was a
I like
filter.
We'll blame it on the light or the weather or something.
Yeah. Like,
But Andrea, how did you get started in the industry?
Well, I actually had a lot of different stuff going on. So when I went to college, I was an English major. I thought I was going to be a teacher, but I could read and I could write about what I read, and didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't tell this group, but I was a court reporter for a while, thinking that I wanted to be my own boss and have that control. But found out that I didn't like being the conduit of other people's thoughts and actions. I wanted to be part of the conversation. So I started temping and ended up working in commercial real estate for about 8 or 9 years. When I met my husband, who was a carpenter and owned his own construction company at the time. And when we found out we were pregnant after we got married, I said, well, you're going to have to get, or actually, no, he was working, doing his thing. I was pregnant. We had our first daughter and continued going that way. And then we found out we were having twins. And I'm like, okay, it's going to cost more for daycare than it is for me to continue working, which is a common thing, even more so now, I think. And so I said, you got to get a real job that has benefits. And he got hired on with a company where we ended up buying that company. He ended up being the general manager. I worked part-time while my kids were infants, and I did a little bit of marketing and office work there. And then we bought the company in 2005. And it's interesting because of what I do now. I do legal review, so my court reporting skills come into play. I did permit research for a developer in our firm when I was doing commercial real estate, so that came into play. And the teaching is still there, right? I think we all teach a little bit, so you never know what those skills that you're learning and the path that you take will take you to help you where you are. And I think all those things were valuable for me.
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. I didn't know you
Yeah.
had twins. My goodness.
All 3 girls, so more girls, girl power, and yeah, and they're all on their way to launching, shall we say.
I love it. I love it.
Andrea, when I was younger, like elementary school, I used to want to be a teacher as well.
Yeah.
And I would hold my book like teachers did, like where they go like this to like show so I would read to all my like stuffed animals, like I was the teacher presenting it to them. Oh goodness.
Oh no, I made math worksheets for my little brother.
That's like bullying.
You're younger than me, but I was like, I made worksheets and I made multiple copies, and oh yeah, it was a thing.
Love it.
I'm gonna start making worksheets for the guys around here when I'm angry at them. Just now you have extra homework. Jessica, you also are a mom, but how did you find your way into this industry?
My background is in interior design. I knew from day one that I wanted to do design, and that's pretty much the only thing I considered when looking for schools. And my husband, when we got married, he was in the military, so we bounced around and I jumped between a few design firms. And the job that I had before coming to J2 was most designers' dream job. The firm was big. Our work won awards. Our projects were featured in magazines. Budgets weren't really a thing. Clients almost never told us no, but that came with a price for me because I was working long hours. It was in a big city, so the commute was very long. And it was just high stress of having to constantly come up for something new, not just only for my own projects, but within the company as well. You're competing. It felt like a little bit of a competition of like who can come up with the new coolest thing. I was burnt out. And my husband left the military. We moved to follow his job, and I wanted a job where it was easy. It didn't require a lot of thought. I was just mentally burnt out. I'm really I love CAD. I could do CAD all day, every day for the rest of my life. And so I found a drafting position with J2. And I interviewed, went through the process, and Jen says, what do you know about exteriors? I said, well, nothing. I know everything from the stud in, but not necessarily from the stud out. And he said, great, we can teach that. You're hired. And I worked my way up from entry-level designer within the company to managing the design team across all 3 offices. So yeah, I think it's important to find a fit, find the company that you feel included in and valued, and that has, I think, what has made me successful at J2 in general.
That's perfect, and it really parlays into our next topic. Jessica is one of a few employees who have gone from one J2 office in one state to another. She started off in the Washington office, was not a giant fan of our weather, which is apparently going to be crazy today. I'm seeing tornado warnings and stuff. It's very Wizard of Oz. But she went down to our Utah office. And a fun fact that I like to share is that Jessica's last day in the Washington office was the day before my first day in the Washington office. And we are like some of the closest coworkers, having never worked in the same office together. So thank you, technology. But I actually came to J2 by way of just a lifetime of careers that all lent themselves to people engineering on some level. I also taught, but very, very young children, which is probably why, if you've ever been to a J2 trade show booth, it's a little bit of a, jovial, childlike experience.
They're fun.
And I worked at the big giant software company in Redmond that probably makes the document you type your documents on. And I was doing customer and partner focused development events. And so really similar to what I'm doing now, which is hearing people out, hearing what their pain points are, hearing what their concerns, how we can develop things that solve those problems. And the advertisement for J2's job for this role just seemed like more of that. I want to help people. This job needs someone to come help people. And so luckily I was at a job where I would finish a lot of days and think, I wonder if anyone knew I was here today. And I probably would have kept doing that forever. But luckily the pandemic went ahead and pushed me in the right direction. And I came to J2 that way. And it was one of those things where it was like, well, I'm in a scary situation because jobs and careers are different now. And so I applied for this job. And after my first interview, just meeting the people who interviewed me and seeing Jen's authenticity, and there was no like conventional questions. I'm not easily disarmed by interview questions, and he managed to do that. So that's how I landed my way here. And then Jessica could go to Utah. But that kind of leads us into what strengths and women in leadership and leadership in general. Let's talk a little bit about the strengths and what do we think good leadership brings to the table, both in female leadership and in leadership in general. And then also maybe we're going to get to some of the challenges after that. So we'll stick to our positive first, and then we'll go to our challenges in women in leadership and whatnot second. But what do you guys think? What strengths do women bring to leadership roles?
I think if you go back in time, I don't even know how much time because I wasn't alive yet, but go back in time. Women have always kind of been project managers. If you think about it, historically they maintained homes and children and threw dinner parties and were on a lot of, I don't know, I'm going to call them committees. I don't know what they were called back in the day, but all the little clubs and card clubs and things like that. And, so being able to manage all of those things still applies to today, and all of the different things now that women are doing that they weren't doing back then. And so I think that multitasking, adapting, being empathetic and whatnot kind of all plays together in that leadership role that I'm not going to say all women are, leadership bound, but most women probably have a leadership type of mentality in them. And so I think it just is great historically how we've grown and been able to utilize those tools still today.
Well, going further back in history, I think I had mentioned that there's actual science to this, and it goes back to hunter-gatherer days.
Yeah.
So the notion of the way we solve problems, I'm sure we have all had a gentleman in our life that may think that we overthink things or perhaps
Oh.
make things too complex. That actually goes back to our primitive beginnings. You know, the hunter mentality is I see the thing, I kill the thing, I eat the thing. With the gathering mentality, it's I've got to know what we can eat, where it is, how it grows, when to pick it, what's poisonous and what isn't. There's just so much more complexity that goes into that level of, you know, procurement for survival than I see the thing, I kill the thing, I eat the thing. And both have a time and place in problem solving. I think that's why teams of, you know, a balanced dynamic in leadership work so well, because you do need the person that can say, like, you know, here's the linear execution of this problem. And you do also need the person that says, okay, let's consider all things so that,
Right.
you know, we can predict what we can predict. And then when the thing that we didn't predict happens, you come back into the see the thing, kill the thing, eat the thing mentality. So we need both, but you know, next time you're told as a woman that you're overthinking things, you let them know that you're just respecting your cave woman ancestors.
Or over communicating something.
Over communicating,
Yeah.
yes.
You just
So-
made
a problem here. We
good
communicate.
point. I have a lot of clients, board members that they're so quick to just act on things. And so part of my role is saying, hey, whoa, like, hold on, let's gather all the information we need to be able to make a sound decision in this, because you know, otherwise we can make mistakes and whatnot. So I appreciate that, you know, the thinking about everything through first is a great mindset to have.
So it's interesting you talk about the two sides, Kelly, because I work with my husband, right? So that in itself is a unique situation, but I think
Yeah.
what works out really well, the yin yang thing totally applies to us. He's got the entrepreneur mindset of potential growth and ways to improve, expand, whatever. And it's never been brought up as an overthinker, but I'm the what's our exposure to this? What are the and I it could be perceived also as pessimism or defeatism, but it's taking that big picture and saying, okay, if we do that, what are the risks, you know, and are we willing to take them? It doesn't mean that we don't take the risks, but let's know the risks going in. And I think that also applies to whether it's design or association management, right? It's like educating your client on those risks. It's not saying you can't do them, but let's say, okay, you want aluminum rails or you want cable railing versus wood picket railings, right? So there's a cost difference, right? It's not necessarily it's a choice. There may be a longevity issue with that, but ultimately you just need to give them enough information so they can make good decisions. And I think that that's my role here in the company is that, you know, I do look at exposure. I mean, we have company vehicles. So every time I see one of my vehicles out there, it's great. It's a billboard, but it's also exposure to the company because somebody might hit it. So, you know, it's like, it's that mom is just like that worrying mom is kind of out there. You know, and I'm sure there are men that do the same thing, but that is my role here is just let's look at the big picture as well.
Jessica, what do you think about how it pertains to leadership? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I am the queen of overthinking. I think there's a thing called the Jessica 2 a.m. club where I will wake up in the middle of the night and I will text people because I will take something very, very small and turn it into this catastrophic thing. And it goes from 0 to 100 real fast. And so for me, that overthinking is just ingrained in my DNA, but it helps again break things down of, you know, what color is it? What does that mean in terms of XYZ? What does that then affect? And what does that affect? And, you know, all these little parts and pieces, that's just kind of how my brain thinks of, you know, especially, or if something's discontinued and we need to reselect something in the project. What is that snowball effect? How does it relate to all the other materials on the building? What happens when you turn the corner? What happens when the roof comes over the edge? Like that's how I think. And with that also then comes communication of here's what happened, here's why it happened, here's what we think should happen, and then over communicating to that to the clients and even internal events as well that happen, you know, within a team of, all right, you know, we made a mistake. Let's discuss it. What happened? How can we build on it? And just kind of bringing in emotions, bringing in compassion, is also, you know, typically a woman characteristic. And
Yep.
I think it all plays in. And, you know, when men have those characteristics, I think it's great. And I think that also makes a great leader because, you know, no one wants to get yelled at a job, whether it's your fault or not, ever. No one should ever be yelled at on a job. So I think just having a variety of those typically women characteristics or female characteristics are not necessarily a bad thing, but work in most situations.
Absolutely. I think, you know, the empathy thing, it is a strong suit for a lot of women. I used to say a lot that I was an empath, and around the office, it kind of got like, but now I simplify it and I tell them that I'm a witch with magical powers, and that somehow is more palpable to them. So I have a broom above my desk and I really run with that. But I think in terms of leadership, you know, I'm a big believer that great leaders make great leaders. But you can also become a great leader by perhaps having a not so good leader. And, you know, you learn as much by watching it done wrong as watching it done right. I've had some not so great leaders at previous positions. And so that has helped form a lot of how I want to lead or not want to lead. But having great leadership currently and here, I think really comes down to empowerment, which is the whole reason we're here. And I think anybody does better when they're empowered to do their most and their best, and being told that, you know, they're trusted, they earn the trust, so they get the trust, and being given that confidence to, you know, to try things and do things and strive to be the best at things. And you don't necessarily always see a lot of stories in a male dominated industry where one might be prone to empower a woman to move into a leadership role. And I luckily don't have that experience here. In fact, I have, you know, very vivid. I can see Jens's face when I hear him say constantly, "We've got some strong women here." And there's just the right amount of fear behind that look. But there's a respect to it, and we love it and we appreciate it. And I think that, yeah, just any type of leadership, whether it be women or otherwise, really comes down to empowerment. Believing that somebody can be their most when they tell you and show you with their actions that they do really like lends itself to that. But on the polar side of that, let's talk about some of these challenges. And when we started our conversation initially in our rehearsals, what I loved was the way we kind of broke the seal and got things, you know, rolling was, oh my gosh, do you have this issue? Because I had this issue, and everybody would go, yes. And I think I talk lovingly about J2 and other places I've worked. I've had wonderful mentors and leaders, but I think no place is perfect. So the caveat is that this is not a male bashing session, but I do think that we would be remiss if we didn't mention that, you know, women still are the minority in a lot of leadership positions in industries and things like that. We have come a long way, but there are some challenges. So what are some challenges that you ladies face in your day to day?
I'm coming at from a different perspective because I am the boss. So, so I
We love that though. We
you
love
know,
that.
but you know, it is construction, and I talk to people about their construction projects a lot. And I think that challenges, I think the thing you have to do as a challenge, and I think this kind of talks to the strength and the previous slide as well, is that I think a lot of women know the answer, but they're not afraid to, or they're not quite sure if they should respond or not. And I think that looking at I think I'm at least willing to do all the research necessary so I understand what I'm saying, right? So I'm backing up my input or my thoughts with fact, and that's just how my brain works. And so I think that that's respected, right? So if you just say, well, I don't know what a fascia is, and I get it wrong 5 times in a row, then I don't really care, right? So it's yes, people may make mistakes, people may ask questions, but you need to learn from those questions and show that this is an industry that you want to participate in and be forward thinking in. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. There's, it's okay to make a mistake and make 10,000 different mistakes. But if you're making the same mistake 10,000 times,
Yeah.
that's where it becomes something different.
Yeah.
Sam,
But I
how
do
about you?
think-
What are some challenges?
Like, as we know, most community managers are women. So I don't really have a struggle necessarily when it comes to being in the industry. I think more so, I'll tell you, the nasty emails typically come more from the men than the women, which is a little surprising. And so it's reminding people that they should respect each other. I was going to ask Jessica if she could actually go tell all my homeowners never to yell at me. That would be great. So I have this famous line that I say, if we cannot have a mutually respectful conversation, then our conversation needs to end and we can pick this up another time. And that like stops people. They're like, wait, what? Because it's, in doing what we do, it's easy to make people mad, and then they call you, and here we are. So mainly that angry homeowners, and then again, just having more clients that are male than female, and having to make sure that I speak with confidence and know what I'm talking about. Like Andrea said, I'll go read something 10 times until I've got it down. So that way, when I present it to someone, I look like I've been talking about that for 10 years. So little tips and tricks, but for the most part, I've been doing it long enough to where I don't really have day-to-day things anymore. I used to cry in my first few years all the time, and now it's a little different. So
I
no
think
more.
women live longer than men statistically because they cry more. My grandfather was a doctor. He contended that that was the case. And so, a couple times a week, I just try to get a good cry in for no darn reason.
Get it out and on to the next to-do list item.
Yeah. Jessica, I specifically wanted to I'm saving you for last. Because when, like I had mentioned, you had moved offices. One of the things that I had heard said was, oh man, who's gonna keep us to do our dishes now? Who's gonna make sure that we do our stuff? Who's gonna do this?
What?
And I was like, well, you guys should be doing that on your own. And they're like, oh, okay, so you'll be the one. You'll be the one that will make sure that we do it.
Whose cup is this? Yeah.
Exactly.
I had to set out a few of those emails of like, why are there dishes in the sink? Come on, guys, this is not your home. We are not, the girls in the office are not your mom. We are not going to pick up after you. And if I cannot wash my dish because your dishes are in the way, there's going to be a problem. Just like I told my husband, he has this little blender bottle and he drinks his protein, whatever, and it's always in the sink. And I told him, if next time I see this in the sink, I'm going to throw it in the yard. And I did.
Is it at
He
least
had to go
rinsed
out and get
out?
it. And
Does he
had
at
to
least
go-
rinse it, or is it just left there with the
It's
protein?
sort of rinsed and then just like kind of thrown in there. I hate dishes in the sink. It's a pet peeve. I can't handle it. But in terms of challenges, I think confidence is the biggest thing that I think women and myself too face. When I came out to this office, we had some project managers that quit, and I was the only one manning the Utah office, and I had to do a bid walk. And while I designed the project, I knew the project. I don't know if the contractors were trying to trip me up or if they were genuine questions, but they just came at me and I was like, whoa, is this normal? Are you trying to make me fumble? And I just, had to take a breath and say, it's okay to not know. Like internally, I think it's okay to not know. And I just came up with that. I think that's a great idea. I'd like to review it with my team. Let me get back to you. I just had to realize I didn't need to have an immediate answer for everything that they were talking about. And so that kind of gave me the confidence to do the next one. And while I've backed off from doing bid walks because I like my temperature controlled office, it has played in. And sometimes I need a reminder, every time I have, my yearly review, and Jim and Jen's are just like, well, how about you do this? And how about, you're already doing this manager role. Do you want to do this? And it's like, oh yeah, I guess I am already doing those skills. Like, you can do this. It's like, okay, yeah, I can do that. And just having that reminder of, yes, I can do that has always been helpful too.
Yeah. I think I've learned to take the stereotypical perception when it presents itself and kind of enjoy it a little bit. because I think that life is more fun with the element of surprise. And so I fondly remember that, you know, in the first days that I had worked for J2, we had an association that just wanted to meet potential consultants and contractors and individuals about a potential project. They were in the very preliminary stages. And so they wanted a representative from the company to go out, and Jen's had a schedule conflict. So he said, okay, you just go out, you'll go out. And I thought, uh-oh, what if I can't? But I went out there and I pulled the car, well, J2 car, and I got out, and someone in the group goes, oh, that's not who we're waiting for. That can't be who we're waiting for. And I went, actually it is. And everyone looked like, well, Jen's hired a Muppet. What is going on? And then, you know, we're still working with that association to this day, which I love. I spent more time with the client looking at all the earrings that she hand makes, which were amazing. And the rest of the guys kind of stood there not knowing what to do. So I think
Way to connect.
it's where sometimes breaking that mold is an asset. And I think that some other things that we get, you know, stereotypically marked with, I'm sure anybody that has heard a man talking about fighting with a woman, they'll say, you know, women, they keep the receipts. So you can be fighting about something and all of a sudden a woman has an ironclad memory of like, well, actually in 1982 on Tuesday at 3 p.m., you said this one thing. And so while it is an asset in an argument, I think it's also an asset in the project world. I think that we can assess good impact and core memories to things that need to be remembered for future reference and lessons in projects. When we see a board suffer due to putting things, you know, putting a process out of order or making a misstep, nobody likes to see that. And because we have that empathy, we carry that feeling of, I don't want people to feel like this. So now I know that this is something I need to preemptively warn boards and whatnot about. And having that like association of feelings to lessons to keeping the receipts can be an asset, because we all have had situations where we see boards that are in just really rough spots, or we have to be the bearer of bad news. And it's gut wrenching. Nobody loves it. And all we can do is be better, do more, do different going forward, and hope for the best. And I think that empathy is an asset in that respect too. I often find that, you know, I think I've been in town hall or board meetings with all of you at some point. And at some point there is an instance where we have to say, okay, let's stop talking about this, because I hear you in the things that are not being said with words. You're stressed and you're scared and you're upset. And let's talk about that for a minute, because we can't move forward unless we can get past that roadblock of our emotions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and I think that setting expectations in this industry is also really important in all of what we do, right? So, but what are people's expectations? And so I think one of the things that we learned early on, because we do work with building exteriors and deck coatings in particular, is access is going to be, you know, blocked. And especially working from home, that's an issue. There are going to be smells. There's no way to get around the smells. And if we're tented, the smells might increase and it might reduce your light. And it's so much better to say that out loud and in front than have them figure it out later. And, you know, to assume what people's expectations are is the wrong way to go. So I think that, you know, we're talking about women in the industry. And I think that, you know, what some people may think about a construction project is going to be completely different from other people. And so having those different perspectives and giving a broader range of expectations benefits everybody, because then we don't feel like we didn't say enough and they didn't know what to ask because they didn't know what they didn't know.
Absolutely. Starting with that, you know, really exposed authenticity is, I think, a really good way to start. And I think sharing some of yourself in that preliminary stage too. One of our senior project managers shares a lot about, like, you know, his wife and his daughters. And I'm sure we've all been where a female in a unit is in a situation where maybe she doesn't feel safe as a result of the conditions. Like, my door lock's going to be off for a while, or there's going to be strangers in my apartment. And they'll say, like, well, I'm a female, I'm on my own. And we can sympathize and empathize with that, because, you know, we have individuals that work with women that they care about, go home to women that they care about, are women that they care about. And I think that like just having that like empathy and that respect and stuff and the communication of just saying like, if I over communicate in the beginning, then we save ourselves from some of this. Let's see. Oh, I'm scooting all over the place. Don't mind me.
Backwards.
I have a scroll mouse. So let's talk about advice. What advice would you give to women that are considering a career anywhere in our industry as a whole or yours specifically? I know, Sam, this is something you're really passionate about. And so we'll go ahead and kick this off with you.
Yeah, you know, I think me being a part of the hospitality industry, I mean, aside from, you know, being in kitchens, I was also a server for 10 years, and I did everything from, you know, casual dining to fine dining. So I got to see all aspects and banquets and, you know, things like that. And just having a mom who was a nurse and, you know, all these different things kind of taught me how to be a people person, as I like to call it. And a little bit more on the extrovert side of the world. And so for me, I want to teach other managers how to be great. I'm very successful at being a manager. I love being a manager, and I want to share that with the rest of the world. And so it's not just about telling someone what to do. It's, you know, I think I made this reference earlier, was you're not going to go tell someone to scrub the toilets. I'll be in the stall next to them scrubbing the toilet, showing them how to do it, you know, kind of thing. And teaching people how to have self-confidence and whatnot is so important too. And so for me, working my way to the top of that. I don't think I want to have communities that I manage for the rest of my life, but I'd love to teach other managers on how to do that and how to have great relationships with their clients and the people we get to network with and business partners, and utilize all the tools available to them in the world that we have. So I think, gosh, what advice would I give them? Confidence, probably. Find your confidence. We see oftentimes a lot of new managers are in meetings and they stare at the screen and they don't know what to do. And, you know, I say, hey, there's an agenda on the screen. Let's follow our agenda, you know? And so it's just doing those kind of little things. And, you know, like Andrea said, teaching them how to know what they're talking about. And so.
Absolutely. I think if we zoom it out, something that we all were really passionate about is the single word of advocate.
Yeah.
Just advocating. We all talked about the deeply uncomfortable world of talking about money and advocating for yourself in that respect. But I think that it runs the chasm. Confidence in advocating for oneself and advocating for the people we serve are hand in hand. Wouldn't you agree?
Knowing your worth, and there's difference in leadership, like you said earlier. There's people who tell people what to do, and then there's people who want to help other people grow into those roles and help people find their best versions of themselves. And so I think having those people in leadership is a great thing in the world. So
absolutely. In keeping with this, talking about work-life balance, Andrea brought up a very insightful aspect of the business that is new-ish in Washington, and like something that I think speaks heavily to work-life balance as it pertains to family life. I don't have kids, but I know a couple of you do. Now I know Andrea has twins. So Washington family paid leave, we started talking about this specifically because of paternity leave, which is a new-ish concept that we hadn't seen long ago. And again, being in that male-dominated industry, we're now seeing more guys being able to take paternity leave, which I think is wonderful. And women taking maternity leave within our industry. What are you guys' experiences with that?
Ooh, so well, first of all, I wish we had it when I had my kids. But that's what I think that's one of the benefits of women in the workplace, right? I mean, I think we advocated for it, and now men get to also benefit from it. You know, the time with either a newborn, whether it's adopted, whatever. But you know, the paid leave also is to take care of elders, right? Or family members. There's so many things that's not just babies, right? So but I think that it allows men to experience that as well. And it's just going to benefit us going forward as a society. It's not putting everything on the women's plate to stay home. And I think that that's where some things kept inhibited women from, moving up in industry because they had babies or they had to choose one or the other. And I think it has leveled the playing field. And I do think that we probably needed men to help us advocate for it in order to get it in place. But it was a joint venture, and it's because of the proliferation of women in the workplace that this came about. And now we're all benefiting from it. And we have carpenters that take it, and they've got, we get to celebrate babies all over the place, which is fantastic. And we also get to understand when people have bereavement and or have to take care of a spouse or something like that. And you get to, and I was going to say earlier too, one of the strengths of, I think being a woman and just business in general is you create relationships. And I think relationships are the strongest thing. You talked about, when you're on a construction project, but if somebody talks about their family, you get to know them, right? And you get to know them, and you want to do better for them, right? Whether you're knowing your client, they know you want it to be a better relationship, and it's going to be a better project because there is a relationship and not just a business transaction. And I think that that's also, I don't know that that's a woman or a man thing, but I think that it definitely, time and time again, having that relationship with your clients, with your coworkers, I think has been a total benefit of having women in our industry, especially.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Jessica, you actually were, I don't know where we all have our lovely backgrounds on, but you at one point were not sure if you would be hosting the Building Doctor show from home while your future woman leader, who is seven
Yep.
now, was with you. Where'd you end up, first of all?
At the office.
Okay.
I thought my husband would be traveling this week, and it turns out he did not need to, so he's on dad duty for the evening. But yeah, I wish they had paid medical leave when I had my daughter. That was not a thing, and my husband's was supposedly supposed to get 2 weeks when I had my daughter, and that also counted the time while I was in the hospital. Like that 2 weeks went to that. And then they called him back early. So I had like 2 days with him, and it was terrible. But then I also felt this obligation of like, I want to be with my daughter, but I need to make money and help earn and contribute. So it was a very stressful, it's an added stress that should be unnecessary to an already stressful, life-changing event. So good job, Washington. I wish all states had this.
You do a really great job at balancing the work-life balance of the childcare, parental stuff, soccer games, all that sort of thing. I know that your daughter and Joe, one of our project managers, are on the same soccer team that he coaches.
Yes.
But how is that something that like you've had to work and figure out over time, or?
A little bit. I mean, I used to be the like, call me at any hours. And I still am that way, but there are some times where I was like, this can wait till tomorrow. I will respond to that tomorrow, as opposed to like immediately responding. I think kind of taking a step back, and you never get this time back, and just remembering that like, I'm going to put my phone on the counter, and for the next 2 hours, I'm going to be with my daughter, and no Instagram scrolling, no, talking on Teams or anything like that. So just learning to make that decision and making a conscious effort to do that it's hard to disconnect. And it's like, what if somebody calls me with a fire? It's like, it will still be there in 2 hours. It probably won't get fixed anyways, because probably after hours, so it won't happen till tomorrow anyways. And so just remembering and accepting that and trying to just not think about it is really important.
Yeah.
If it's a real fire in 2 hours, you probably don't even have to worry about it anymore.
True.
Not your problem anymore.
There are other people at J2 that can handle these problems, and there's a phone tree. They'll call me if they're, I'll eventually call them.
Yeah.
Or they'll call my husband if it's a really big deal.
Buddy, get a hold of you.
Where's Jessica?
Sam, you and I we sit on the other side of things. Neither of us have kids. And I think that all four of us really, where the interesting dynamic in our work-life balance lies is that we're all deeply, deeply passionate about our work. and ambitious, and we take work personally, because I think that anything that's worth doing is worth taking a little personally. And balance is an interesting dynamic. I think for you guys, it's the family balance versus the work, and creating that symbiotic balance. I don't know how it is for you, Samantha, but I'm kind of a live to work person. It makes me kind of an outlier. But when you find something that you love, do it all the way,
Yeah.
And so I find myself saying a lot, balance looks different for everyone. And so what my balance isn't necessarily your balance, and learning how to respect those things are. We have boards with boundaries, it's, can I call you after hours? Can I, have this conversation on a Saturday? And I think that, respecting our team by setting a universal precedence for boundaries of, business hours and whatnot is one thing, but also being able to say like, okay, well, I am different from others, and you can call me at, 6, 7. I am a member of the Jessica 2 a.m. call club, because the Kelly 2 a.m. club, we meet at the same time.
Add me in
So
that.
we'll reach out to each other about stuff like that. But so do you find that like explaining your ambition and balance in terms of your personal life is something that you have to do sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, I am not a morning person, but I am an evening person. So it's kind of like a lot of my boards, I'm like, don't talk to me before 10 a.m. because I'm not going to be somebody that you're going to want to talk to before 10 a.m. But after 10, like I'm great. And they'll see this is a bad habit. This is a bad habit. If you're a manager on here, don't do this. But I don't have that delayed send on my emails. And so like I have board members that are also night owls. And so at 1 a.m. I send them an email, and they're like, oh, like, what are you doing right now? Like, and I'm just like, nothing, just this, my best hours are like in these late evening times. And, so I kind of connect with them a little bit, and, and then there is some that try and call me after hours, and I'm like, no, like, sorry, that's, this is me time. But I also, in the role that I have, I also have, I can flex time when needed and still take care of myself. I'm very fortunate in that. And so, but yeah, I like to work. My mind likes to be doing things. But I am taking my first PTO vacation in a couple weeks of 9 days
Congratulations.
off. No, my laptop is coming, but I'm not going to be on it since October of 2023. So to kind of give you an idea, normally I would take my laptop and kind of do half days, where I'm going or whatnot. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to take an actual break this time. So
Good for you. Congratulations. Are you going somewhere fun?
the Dominican Republic, I'm getting the heck out of these thunder, lightning, whatever storms is going on. And I'm going to go sit on a beach somewhere.
Run as fast as you can.
Right.
Have an extra marg on the beach for me.
This podcast is part of J2's free live webinar, The Building Doctor Show. To attend the live show and ask your questions during the Q&A, visit www.j2consultants.com.